Hey, this is Fred West from the Solar Agents. We're here at one of our sites we installed a couple years ago. Whole home backup system here, Solar. We've got the batteries out there in the shed. And the reason why we're at this site was a couple weeks ago. There are a lot of changes that are being announced as far as the changes for the federal investment tax credit, which is the tax credit available, best tax credit available for solar on the residential commercial side. And for like folks like these, the reason why we wanted to get whole home backup was because of the grid instability. Turns out it was a great decision for them because they lose power 5-6 times a month right now, which is a lot for the family, and so their quality of life really demanded having this protection for them. And losing that tax credit is going to make a big difference for a lot of people, for the affordability of a system as well as the return on investment. So we're taking a practical look at what that tax credit did and what the future may hold for it, just so that everyone's prepared to see what's coming. Enjoy.
Hi, folks. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the concerns people have, the adjustments being made to the federal investment tax credit. Other people refer to it as a federal income tax credit. Either one is acceptable for this application. But what we're going to talk about is, the impact of the recent legislation as far as its effect on the opportunity of solar. So for a long time, solar was just a fantastic opportunity in our industry. The interest rates were really low. The material and other things to put, an installation together were, relatively inexpensive. And, basically what's happened is with the interest rates increases and the labor increases and the other things that happened over the several years, now at this point, honestly, the last thing that the industry itself was holding on to was this federal investment tax credit. All right. And what it was a subsidy from the government to promote people to move forward with solar. Now, I realize that some people say, well, solar may be for me, may not be for me. Regardless of where you stand on that, solar does benefit everyone. What I mean by that is, especially on the residential scale, what happens is over the years, we've obviously had increased, rates with energy costs. But in addition to that, we've had some grid instability. We have areas because of the growth of electric vehicles, because of the growth of AI, because of the growth of even crypto mining. Some of these grids have actually been put under a strain that they're not able to support or handle. And so, solar, even with your neighbor having it, has made it so that the demand on the grid has gone down, and made it so that we don't have to update the entire grid all at the same time. And so just having these little mini power stations, and really even how they're leveraging solar batteries now, to where they have these virtual power plants, which I don't want to get into this one, but that's actually a very cool concept where they're using these lithium batteries to make up the difference for the energy demand in certain areas and during certain times of year, like the summer and the winter, when the energy demand goes up due to heating and cooling. So what's happened is everyone benefits from having solar, and the concern that a lot of people have had is when with the increases we've had in the interest rates and the increases we've had in labor costs and the increases we've had in material costs, to take away the highest subsidy that's available in our industry right now, which is the federal investment tax credit. It's going to make it so that, other than people who really want to move forward clean energy, or people who really have a huge demand for, the grid instability, and they have a lot of blackouts or something, it's going to pretty much, cripple the industry, right? So in order to understand a little bit more, you can go to energy.gov. And energy.gov has a whole sheet, it's 23 pages long of everything you'll ever want to know about the federal income tax credit, or the federal investment tax credit. But to simplify it, this is how it works, right? So if you were to get a solar installation and it's finished within a certain calendar year, what happens is up to 30%, as it stands right now, up to 30% of the cost of installation. That's the designing, the material, the install, the permitting, everything. So up to 30% of that cost to get it installed you can have count directly towards your tax liability. So for simplicity, if you get a $30,000 system, and if you don't mind, I'm going to just round up what 30% is. We can call it $10,000. Okay. So with the $30,000 install, which is a smaller system, no battery, we've got a 30% credit. We're going to round it up to say $10,000, 30%, a little bit less, right? But for $10,000, if your tax liability for that calendar year is 10,000, it's a wash. You don't have to pay Uncle Sam anything. He says, hey, we're covered because you got solar installed. All right. Now, if your tax liability is $20,000, all right, you can't exceed the 30%. And so again, we're using 10,000. So what happened is 10,000, they say you're good, but you still owe us the other 10,000, total of 20. Third, situation we end up with occasionally is where people's liability may be $5,000 at the end of the calendar year and not the whole 10,000. So what would happen is you would get the 5,000 the first year, roll over, get the additional 5,000. Pretty simple. All right. Well, you can see here, this is more or less a kind of a brief history on what that credit has been. So the solar credit initially started in 06. It was 30% from 06 to 19. And then you see in 2020 and 2021, it dropped down to 26%. We'll show why later on that, but there's a specific reason why. But then in 2022, it went back to 30%, and they try to put it in for 10 years. And this was part of the new Green Deal. I'm not getting political here at all. The thing is there are a lot of beliefs around having these things in for 10 years because they did not believe that it promoted fiscal responsibility. All right. There were, honestly, several companies where they were taken advantage of, not necessarily the investment tax credit, not the FITC, but other elements of that Green Deal where they were not being fiscally responsible with it. And so they just said, all right, we're going to make a change. And let's look what that change really looks like overall. So first, let me explain why it was at 26% for those couple of years. So this one starts at 2019. Boom, we're at 30%. Well, in 2020, because there was a scheduled depreciation of it, okay, or decrease of it. In 2020, we were going to be at 26%. And then and then in 2021, we were going to be at 22%. And then in 2022, we were going to be at 10%. And basically what would happen on a regular basis was the government, just really making sure that this had the impact they wanted, right? They wanted to make sure that this investment tax credit was still supporting grid health, and it was still making it so that people were being fiscally responsible, and it was still providing power in areas that obviously needed additional power because of AI or electric vehicles or whatever else was they were doing, crypto, right? So they would just year to year they may make some adjustments. They did allow it to go to 26, and then and it really just topped off there. And so it's not unusual for it to go down. However, once they did it for 10 years in stone, that actually changed a lot. You had, honestly, just from our perspective, you had a lot of companies that really didn't care for this industry, didn't care for the solar industry like we do, or a lot of other of my contemporaries do. And they just saw an opportunity for 10 years that the government was going to subsidize this, and it attracted people to this industry that, let's just say, would not represent it the best way we know how. And so what was seen is because of, the perceived fiscal irresponsibility, and honestly, it did it. We've seen it. It attracted companies that really shouldn't have been in this industry. Big changes, have been made here recently. So the changes that are going through Congress and the House right now, okay, in the big, beautiful bill, which I think a lot of people have heard of, they are making some major adjustments to this, to this investment tax credit. All right. So if we were to, just real quick, just go to solar. You can do this yourself. I encourage anybody to do it themselves. This is on the ways and means.house.gov. This is the official bill. All right. We see in section 112006 the termination of residential clean energy credit. So that 10-year, 30% that they had, and then in 2033, 10 years from when it was done, it was going to go to 26, and the year after that was going to go to 22. It has now been accelerated to expire on December 31st, 2025. What that basically means is this, is that you have to be fully installed by 2025. Now, you don't necessarily have to be turned on because that has to do with the utility. That's something we've explained to our clients. As long as you have done what you need to and you've been installed, you're fine. But if the utility, for one reason or another, hasn't done PTO, which is permission to operate, or there's some inspections, you've done your part, you're fine. Okay, you've paid out. So what's going to happen is if you are not fully installed by December 31st, 2025, that investment tax credit will no longer be available. Now, again, the thought of this, and if you look at everything that's in sequential order for these specific sections, you're going to see that this is basically just gutting that entire new Green Deal, right? And what we'd like to think, right, is that we may go back to the way we were, right? They're not going to guarantee it for 10 years anymore because that's going to make it so that it has some checks and balances for our industry. And so without having our crystal ball, because I don't have one, most people, even people that do, I don't think you can really tell us what's going to happen. Without having that crystal ball, this is what we see is the beliefs around solar for the current administration. Okay, so the administration that's changing it, these are the beliefs that we have seen with it. All right, so anybody can do this as well. They can go into Google and do the quotes on residential and commercial solar. All right, so he has said multiple times that he is a big fan of solar, but he is a fan of decentralized solar, not centralized. The difference being is these big solar farms that we're seeing go out there, and these big facilities that we've seen, as far as providing power at a mass scale. Not a fan of it for multiple reasons. However, when it comes to specific buildings, smaller commercial properties and homes, he says he's a big fan of it. So without having our crystal ball, what we would imagine is that we are going to have some type of replacement, again, much like this, but we don't know where that's going to start. I could not imagine, could be wrong, but I could not imagine, I don't think anybody else that is within our sphere and our industry would imagine that it's going to be higher than 30% when they find their new way of applying this tax credit. Which means, all right, that there's a good chance that it goes basically back on track. Maybe it goes to 26% next year, or maybe they give one extra year. We don't know. Maybe it goes to 22%. I doubt it's going to go to 10, but I don't know. Maybe it just continues on the track it was. Maybe 26% goes for a couple of years to 22% moving forward. Okay, that is usually the pattern, as you can see, that they follow with this tax credit. So the grander answer is this. Yes, the changes made in the BBB, okay, the big beautiful bill, will have an impact on our industry, and it will have an impact on the value of solar for people who believe that it's going to be a good option for them because they're want to save on their utility costs over time. They want grid instability. They want to have a positive impact on the environment, or they want to put a legacy together. It will have an impact on all those things. To add an extra note on that, because of the conversation surrounded the tariffs and keeping things within manufactured within the United States, I will say that parts of the existing ITC do actually have basically national manufacturing, right? Domestic manufacturing, where it's an additional 10%. So who knows? It could be 22%, but if all the material you purchase meets certain criteria to be considered domestically manufactured, it's 30%. Okay, or 32%. They can add an extra 10. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that we're going to have something there just because of things that he said when it comes to residential solar. But to keep things simple, in 2025, there are already changes scheduled We don't know what the future impact's going to be. And so if anyone has the means to move forward with their solar project, we strongly encourage them to do so, because what we don't know, we really don't know. Now, overall, I hope this was a good explanation. Having an understanding of the federal investment tax credit, having an understanding of what the history of it looks like, understanding what it the changes that are being made to it, and understanding the future of it. That's really what we wanted to support everybody with, just so that the information that's out there is as accurate as possible. All right. So again, this is Fred West from Solar Agents. Really appreciate you. Look forward to continue to support you in your solar journey. Bye. Hey, thanks for checking out this video from the Solar Agents. Make sure to check out our YouTube channel and our other social media platforms for more solar tips and the very latest updates going on in the rapidly changing world of solar. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, and we look forward to being a continued part of your solar journey.